Continuing, here is a ArcGIS online map in which I have the standard starter base map, and I've loaded my data set that I created in my desktop, which is still probably the most convenient way to prepare data in a sophisticated way, the one that most people are most familiar with. This is a data set that includes only those census tracts in the New Madrid seismic zone, and right now they're being symbolized by the social vulnerability index. And the way I was able to do that is by picking, after I loaded this data set, it loaded a default symbology. In order to get the symbology looking like it's looking now, I went to this symbol right here. I hovered over the layer, go to the symbol that's a circle, a square, and a triangle, which is the style button, what we also tend to call symbology, and I clicked on it, and I have, and you've played with symbology a bit before, what I have here is choices about how I want to style this layer, how I want to display its style or symbology. I can make a separate symbol for every value, which would look like a very chaotic map. I can have a single symbol of one particular type. I can have what's called and I can't remember what they're called, a case in which there's a single symbol where the value that you assign to it controls its size, or in this case the most appropriate, where everything is drawn as polygons and the color is assigned according to the value. And that's what I used, so I'll click on that, and it gives me a control here. I can pick my color range using the symbols. I can pick a legend in this way, and I can pick the legend, and I can actually control the display label that goes with each color in the legend. I can also break my values into a number of ranges, whether I want to show 6 different ranges of brown or 7 or 8 or more ranges of brown. I can also, and some of these obviously are working better than others, I can also symbolize this by looking for natural breaks where there are where there's gaps between data sets, or gaps in the data set. The whole story of symbology is fodder for another presentation. What is important in this talk is that I have applied the symbology, and I have actually created a symbology where the darker the color, the higher the social vulnerability index. So the dark colors are areas with high social vulnerability. The light colors have lower social vulnerability or more resilience. And I knew from my analysis of the metadata that a field called SPLTHE4 is where the actual social vulnerability index is stored. So that's how I did it. And I forgot step number 1, which was where I actually make the choice of what particular attribute I want to be used to create the colors in the map. So that's the story with that. I will say cancel to return to the symbology that I worked out already. Another very, very important and very significant thing I've done to this map, which will be useful in the context of creating a story map, is to configure the pop-up of this. And the way a pop-up is configured is by going to the layer itself, Social Vulnerability Index, and going to the 3 dots thing, which means more options, and asking for configure pop-up. This is a very, very valuable, it looks the same importance as many other things, but it's actually a very, very important tidbit and a way in which we can control how this map is used. And what I've actually done is I have identified another part of the attributes for this data set called PL minority, which is actually the portion of that census tract that is declared as, or that have declared themselves as minority members. That would probably be non-Hispanic, or would be the opposite of non-Hispanic whites. So usually minority plus non-Hispanic whites equals the total population. But people who have declared on their census surveys that they're a member of a minority would count in this portion of the data set. And I am choosing now to report that particular value, which is one of many values that's in the attribute table. There's actually quite a few values in the attribute table that are available. The one I'm going to use is the portion of minorities, and we'll see in a moment why that is quite an interesting story all by itself, which will build into our bigger story. So we have minority, and this box right here is just a text message that comes up with the pop-up instead of this relatively obscure terminology for it. I'm going to cancel so I don't change anything. And having set up that pop-up, what the user of this map is now able to do is click anywhere on the map, and the proportion of minorities in the population will be reported by clicking. And we click around and we see that there are actually very substantial differences in the minority population in this area. And most notably, if we pick an area that has a high social vulnerability, we discover it has a fairly high portion of minorities living there. There's another one that has a very high portion of minorities. There is another one right there. Again, a very high portion of minorities. Again, and again. And a pattern emerges. And now we'll look at another census tract that has high resilience, and that is almost all non-Hispanic whites. Almost all non-Hispanic whites. Very high proportion of non-Hispanic whites. And we travel around the whole area, and what we discover from this map, which now we'll be able to share as a project, is the fact that in a high-risk natural disaster area, a seismic risk area, the people who are most vulnerable also are very likely to be minorities. So what we have here is a very clear example of social injustice, where minority populations are much more at risk, both because of their location and their social vulnerability, much more at risk to natural disasters. We'll put this all together in the next video.